So yes, my husband and I just moved from New York to Raleigh, and it's been interesting, moving and settling into this new life. And over the last, 10 years of my adulthood, I can finally say with full, pure gumption and certainty that I love my husband. And that has been a sentence that, between me and my mother's journey and my grandmother's journey with marriage and wifehood, has been an interesting and at sometimes difficult and impossible thing to say. So I grew up in New York City, 76th and Park. A lot of people ask, where in New York City, where in New York City? So I just usually go straight to the cross streets because that's usually how granular we end up getting. Um, I have memories of running down 76th Street past the Carlisle Hotel in the snow or the rain, physically one time, bam, running into the very hard body, I might say, of Hugh Jackman, as he was coming out of the Carlisle Hotel, and I was rushing to be able to get a taxi cab going up Fifth so I could hop out on 83rd and Fifth and hop back out and go across to Madison and get to class on time. I, grew up getting into the wrong big black Suburbans accidentally at times when our driver was coming to pick us up from school, and we just sort of automatically got into the big black Suburban where there was only a driver in the front seat, and that was a very kind of comical routine thing that happened on the Upper East Side. Now I give this background of my upbringing, that kind of resembled Gossip Girl, to, for lack of a better visual for you. That when I was 19 and my parents were just starting on getting a divorce, I was at a diner with my mom, and being a 19-year-old college student, I'm like, sweet, I am like at free diner with my mom. I'm gonna get waffles and pancakes and bacon, and I don't even know what else, French fries, milkshakes, extra fries for later for when I'm hungover tomorrow to put in my little fridge. And she paid in quarters. She had a Chanel bag with it, but she was literally taking out a big Ziploc bag full of quarters to pay for it, because my father had frozen all of the credit cards, frozen her accounts. And that was a very jarring change of reality for me when I was 19. And the funny thing is that I did not even know that I was pretty much looking into a future for myself. I was having lunch with my future self. Now, after my parents got divorced, my mother did remarry, and she was able to find someone that was a much better fit for her, as if she had ordered him out of a catalog. And at this time, when my mother was getting remarried, I was getting married. And Sean was kind of rough around the edges, but he was English. So smoothed all the edges over, because, oh, but he's a funny English man, right? No. And I remember walking down the aisle on my wedding day and literally bawling my eyes out. And afterwards at the reception, people came up to me, guests, family, friends. Oh my God, Lucy, that was so beautiful. I have never seen a bride so emotional. I mean, just tears streaming. And it wasn't until years later that I was able to actually articulate and finally vocalize that those tears were so intense because I was walking down that aisle looking at this man, knowing and seeing my own divorce in my own mind's eye. Now, this is where sort of the way that my mother was taught, the way that my grandmother was taught. For example, my grandmother had a scholarship to Vassar, and she was told she wasn't allowed to go. She had to just stay home and get married. And she's got a beautiful marriage of her own. She's one of those women who's been married for like 5,000 years, and they're just like adorable, adorable, loving couple. And my mother wasn't able to find her own happiness and figure out, like, wait, I don't actually have to grin and bear this just because we're having 5 homes, just because of the money, just because of saving face, just because of my friends. And that was a big struggle for me. That was something that, for my mother, she dealt with living behind this thin veil of being a CEO's wife and not having an identity to herself at all for 25 years. For me, it was actually being forced way too much into my own identity, because I would go days without even seeing Sean. I would go out to brunch, go out to dinner, and he would just sit on the couch for hours, for days, crusting away and just not even getting dressed, showering, anything. Where she had snide comments about her drinking or her vanity, which my father drove her to and had created for this perfect wife mold, I had a hole in the wall 2 inches not from my face. So I called my grandmother and I asked her, at what point does for better or for worse turn into divorce? And she told me, Lucy, it happens, and it has to happen the second that actions, words, intentions are no longer motivated by love, kindness, understanding, healing, compassion. All respect was a huge thing. And they start to be more malice, more spiteful, more tit for tat, more, well, fine, I'll go to your sister's birthday dinner, but then you better not ask me to do anything with you for another month. So I moved out, I got a divorce, and I moved to Queens. It was actually my favorite apartment I've ever had, apart from this one. And there was a gyro stand downstairs where the guys knew my name every morning. And when I was stopping there for a little late night snack, they would watch my purse so I could run across the street and get a Sprite for 25 cents less than they were charging. And I was broke. I was broken and I was unemployed. But then one night I met some friends at a place in the village called Marie's Crisis. And Marie's Crisis is one of those holes in the wall that I'm sure is probably smaller than most people's kitchen that's on this call. Unless you are living in New York, then it might be the size of your apartment. And it was a piano show tunes bar. And I was just dancing and singing to Rent songs, which Rent is like kind of actually the only musical that I can like legit even sing to. My voice is horrible, and this man walks in, tall glass of water, Brooks Brothers suit, Barber coat, but he was starting to serenade me and dance with me to Rent and to all of these musicals. So I just assumed that he was passing through. I just assumed that he was probably not a heterosexual and or available man, because after years and years of being in this marriage where I was told that I was a piece of garbage, that I was not worthy of anything apart from that hole in the wall next to my face, I couldn't believe it. And then we became inseparable. And I am so grateful for my grandmother for giving me that advice and that perspective. I am so grateful that my mother, and it honestly breaks my heart for her a little bit that she didn't get to find her light at the end of that tunnel until she was in her 50s. And when I was ending my marriage, I said, you know what? I'm not going to wait till I'm 55 to find my Bob. I want to find my Bob now so that I can live a whole life with him. And thus is now the way that I can wholeheartedly, confidently say that I love my husband. Thank you.